Build creative confidence. Beat the inspiration addiction. Join the Writer's Gym. Victoria Dowd is the award-winning author of the best-selling Smart Woman's Mystery series. Victoria has been shortlisted for the CWA Dagger. Her novel, The Smart Woman's Guide to Murder, won the People's Book Prize for Fiction and was in search of the classic murder mystery novels Book of the Year. Victoria was awarded the Gothic Fiction Prize for her short fiction and the Syke House International Film Silken Noose Award. Victoria is the Vice Chair of the Crime Writers Association and before becoming a writer was a criminal defence barrister for many years. Her historical crime novel Death in the Aviary was released this year and is the first book in a new series. Her standalone novel The New Rules of Murder will be published by Sphere in April next year. So we're looking forward to a year from now when we can talk about that more.
Well, I think it's June now.
Oh.
I think it's June.
June is the new April.
Yeah.
We met at the Bloody Barnes Festival, of which you are a patron. And so we met through crime fiction. And I understand this has been quite the theme of your life, that you discovered Agatha Christie very young and went from there, didn't you?
It's right, yes. Probably far too young to be reading about murder, I should imagine. But I think people think that's okay when it involves Agatha Christie. It's kind of, I was 8 years old. Obviously, the age I am, I didn't have iPads or the internet or anything like that. And so, just found this little book, quite an innocuous little penguin book sitting on a shelf, and I was taken away to another place. You're immediately in amongst it on this train with all these amazing characters, Russian princess, all these fantastic people, and an amazing plot that just keeps you hooked from page one.
Those moments are so important, aren't they? I also have things I discovered technically definitely too young that then become so relevant and truly inspirational for life, don't they?
Oh, completely. Yeah, I think it's they're quite formative years when you get into reading, and I've read a lot of books since then, but I think some of the ones that really stick in your mind are the ones you discover when you're a child. And they kind of, big books that you love a lot go through the rest of your life with you, I think, at different stages. So, for instance, something like Jane Eyre, when I was young and reading it, I was really, really scared. I thought there was something in the attic, like a ghost or perhaps some sort of creature or, something awful like that. And then when I became a teenager, of course, you've got Mr. Rochester is absolutely gorgeous. He's amazing. But now, as a middle-aged woman, you sort of think, well, hang on, this guy's locked his first wife up in the attic because he fancies a younger model.
And also then you find out that this definitive older man turns out to be in his early 30s, which I find quite upsetting.
I know. And so how young is Jane?
It's more that I agree with you about Jane Eyre. And my personal life is testament to how much I was influenced by Jane Eyre, because it was age gap after age gap. And I do absolutely blame Charlotte Bronte for that.
Completely.
100%. But actually the Ramona books as well, just children's books, and you go back and you find that the parents in previous generations, what they considered adult arrival point like that was so very young. But so how we see young is different. I wonder actually, talking about that eight-year-old who discovered your eight. Do you think the things that she saw and discovered in there are the same things that you get excited by in crime now? How if at all have what's important about those novels changed for you?
I think that obviously the main wonderful thing that draws you in about Agatha Christie is the plot. The plotting is meticulous and relentless as well. It's death, it's then who is that, that's this, and it moves forward at a great pace, which I think still draws me into crime fiction. I think that you need a thundering good plot in a crime book. There's not much opportunity to stand and look at the vistas.
Yes.
But I think the thing that's changed for me is looking at people's motivations for instance, in that particular book, as a child, you don't realise who this man is, Ratchet, who's the victim. He's a man who, when you read the book, has done this sort of thing before and will do it again. He takes children and he kills children. We talk about Agatha Christie being quite cosy a lot of the time, but they club together to there's a murder of a paedophile basically in that book, which is something obviously that I wasn't aware of when I was very young. But I think the motivations of people, especially the more complex ones, are things that I like to look at now quite a lot. But I suppose the basic ones are all still there, aren't they? Love, jealousy, greed.
And a need for justice.
Yes. And I don't think that really would have been something as a child I was terribly influenced by. But now, a lot of her books like that, for instance, And Then There Were None. He's a judge and they're on, this island where it's basically a court that's being run, and they have been sentenced to death for their crimes because they've slipped through the system. And I love that sort of thing. But I think the other thing as well is something that perhaps Golden Age fiction doesn't deal with a huge amount of the time is the impact of death on people. Often in those old books, there's a body in a library, but basically, and everybody's just sort of almost stepping over it with a cocktail saying, let's see if we can work out the clues. Whereas I think now there's a lot more space to explore the concept of grief. And these books, death is right at the middle of crime fiction a lot of the time, but we don't talk about the impact on the victims very much, I don't think.
And it's almost like there is a sort of, I don't want to say a contradiction, but in that search for justice, in the importance of feeling like there is order to the universe and that crime will be punished and so on, there is that, but there's also the massive insecurity, the limit of our power. And when you break it down to that, it's anything but cozy. So when I heard you say in an interview recently that Charlotte Blood, that heroine was the woman you've always wanted to write, and I think that's character and setting, which obviously I'll let you talk about. But so the sort of the Golden Age has always attracted you, but I wonder if more modern storylines offer different things that are also important or exciting for you.
Totally. And what I wanted to do with Charlotte Blood was take somebody from the Golden Age. But I've always kind of tried to, when I've read those sort of books, imagine if they walked in the room now. And what I didn't want to do is have her as a sort of woman in 1920s fancy dress. I wanted to explore what it would be like to be a woman in that time who doesn't just want to be married to the next guy, because she's a widow at this point, who does want a career but isn't trained to do anything really. But I think that those concepts really resonate now in a modern age. Unfortunately, we still have those same issues a lot of the time. So for instance, in the second one, which I've just finished writing, she is finally taken on in a more permanent role at the newspaper. So she'll be serialising her account of what happens in the second book. And she says to the editor, and will I be paid the same rate as the men? And, that is still an issue these days. Women aren't paid a commensurate amount as with the men on the whole. So I kind of wanted her to be this woman of the 1920s, but also to look at her as a real, fully formed, three-dimensional human being who could walk through the door right now and tell you her ambitions, her frustrations, and the problems she faces in life, particularly as a young widow, of which there were many at that particular point in history because of the wars, and the expectation that they just get on with it and, finds a bit of menial work because they're not trained to do anything, they're not accepted in many professions, or marry somebody who's got a good job.
And being defined by other people, not being defined by your actions, of which writing is the polar opposite.
Exactly.
Yeah. So were you always a writer? So we have the reader at 8 finding crime fiction. Did you start writing crime fiction as a child?
Not particularly crime fiction. I did write quite a lot. I think my first one was about the brownies.
Excellent. Ex-brownie right here.
Yeah. So that was quite fun, and I was quite influenced by things like, by Enid Blyton. I quite like the Famous Five, so there were always, a gang going out to do something fun or having a tree house. I always wanted
And
to
there was
have
always danger.
There's
Yeah.
always a little bit of danger, but it's not too much danger. But then, I went to a Northern comprehensive school, and there was no possibility in those days of going to the careers teacher and saying, I want to be a crime writer. I had to have a proper job. So that's why I went on and became a lawyer for quite a long time. But I was still writing lots of short fiction. So yeah, I kept the writing going, and obviously the obsession with crime fiction.
I must ask you about that, if it's all right, the sort of jigsaw aspect of when you have a very intensive work life and the writing needs to happen. I love how I've certainly found with myself, and I know many of my guests and clients find that with writing, as with so many things, if you want to get it done, ask a busy person, that you
Yeah.
find that fits in, that some people will take a year off work and do nothing, have stress and do some writing, still get frustrated that they're not doing enough writing. What was the reality for you? Do you find that having days made for it is a good thing? Do you find that having too much to do and fitting it in works as well? What's the time relationship for you?
Oh gosh, well, I suppose it's a problem everybody faces, isn't it? And
Oh yeah. This is why it's so valuable to see how different and how similar it is for
yeah, well, I
yeah.
took a year's sabbatical from my chambers because I was a barrister, to write, and then the books did take off eventually, and so I think I'm about in my 25th year of that sabbatical. I would say to anybody who wants to write, just write. Often it's easier to do all the messing about around the edge. You think, oh, my study's really messy. As you can see, it is. And it's much easier to do all the things around writing than the actual writing, because it can be quite hard and challenging. But I very much have to put the blinkers on. So it involves locking myself away for long periods of time on my own and doing it. Otherwise, it won't get done. And, anything else like tidying the house, doing anything like that has to take very much a second place. I'm very strict with my timing, so I will usually be at my desk for about 9 o'clock, and I don't stop until about sort of 4:30, 5 o'clock, and I eat my lunch at my desk. It's not a terribly healthy lifestyle, but I try to be strict that I don't work in the evenings. I try not to work at weekends, and I do take holidays and just put I'm out of office at the moment. So I treat it very much like a job, because you're in control of it yourself all of the time. And because it's this kind of industry, we'll get emails at all different times of the day and night. Things are always there. There's always something on my desk that either needs editing or a small thing needs writing. But the main thing is the books. And I think it's very easy to lose sight of that. There's lots of literary festivals. There's all sorts of things that you can be doing and being a writer rather than doing the writing. So I think, yeah, you have to be quite strict with yourself, I think.
Yeah. So within that day you arrive, you do it's book first, and then it's the almost, if I can put it this way, administration of having a writing life
After,
second.
very much so, very much so. There'll always be various things that need doing. So someone might want a quote for a book, or a little piece for a magazine or something like that. But the book has to come first, because it's very easy to sit down and do all of those things when you're fresh and you think, oh, I'll just do this because it's easy to do.
That is the killer, isn't it? I'll just
Yeah, yeah. Never just,
never just.
tinker around with the website. Social media is the worst, because we're all expected to do that, and it is, part of the job. But I often think, no, that has to wait until later. That must wait until later. That's not the first thing I do. That's the last thing I do.
And if you took the magic wand and extended a particular time of day, so you had more writing time. When for you are the most naturally creative bits? What period of day would you stretch so that you could get the best you for the longest?
I would say sort of between about kind of 11 o'clock in the morning till about 2 o'clock. It takes a long time to get my engine up and running. So it's at least 2 hours in before I think, yeah, this is going well.
Yeah.
And that's rare.
I like the expression throat clearing, that it takes your brain a bit of time to get into it.
Totally. And, at the moment I'm editing and it will take a good few pages of going through it to go, yeah, I'm back in the story now. I'm back in and enjoying it and reading. Because the first few pages, you're like, oh no, not this again, this book. And you do have to get used to reading the same book over and over again.
Yeah.
And I think by the time you're absolutely sick of it, that's the time it's ready to go and be published.
Yeah, so relate, and it's an important thing for people to hear. I think that it can be so easy to think, I'll feel more confident or I'll have so much more energy when I've got this kind of recognition or that kind of recognition. And then we arrive at the point where we maybe do have that kind of recognition. And how we relate to the writing doesn't change. The goalposts change.
Yeah.
But the reality of being the person that we are, we're already in. And it's important to know what works for you, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And it is important as well to keep hold of your own voice, because there's a lot of noise around authors all the time. And wouldn't it be better if this, or, this person, they compare you to other writers. There's an awful lot of comparison goes on. And that is all just noise. That's, that will cloud out who you want to be and what you want to write. So, for instance, I'm writing a new standalone to follow on from the one that comes out next year. And I started writing it. I got about 10,000 words in. I was loving it, absolutely loving it. And suddenly realised I was writing in the present tense, which is not that usual in crime fiction because it's often recounting something that's happened in the past. So, yeah, really loving doing that. But you do have to shut out the noise a lot and not be too influenced by everything else around you.
That's such a lovely example of when the part of us that is in charge, not the critic, not the one who is saying my genre doesn't do that, the bit underneath that is doing its unique contribution, because only you will ever be you. It's so lovely that example of enjoying what you were naturally writing and recognizing how that might differ from the expectation, but recognizing the enjoyment, allowing that to, I hope, allowing that to win. Did it win?
Yes, it has so far. Far. Yeah, it's fun. And you've got to keep the fun with the writing as well, because some bits of it are quite grueling, when you are heavily into the edits. And, the minutiae of, is this one word or two words? Does this structure work here? Oh my God, I've got a plot hole here. Because there's a lot of moving parts in my books and a lot of mechanics with it, a lot of it is quite mechanical. Who's in what place at what moment in the book is very important. So all those beautiful scenes you have where somebody discovers the body or whatever, and you think, oh God, this person can't discover anything because they left 10 minutes ago. And I hate
I've got to go back, bring them back.
Yeah, all the mechanics of it. And there's often a voice in my head thinking, oh, the reviewers will look at this and realise, no, that she's made an error there. I think one of the worst things was when I saw somebody had taken one of my books and put lots and lots of post-it notes through it so that they could find the clues, but also go back and make sure I got everything right and in the right order. It is, that bit's quite testing, the mechanical bit.
One has questions about their life choices.
Yeah.
What situation was this? Was this a sort of Goodreads lunatic?
Oh, I don't go. I'm afraid I don't go on Goodreads.
Oh, quite right.
I'm aware of it. I don't go on that. I'm not so sure it is for me as the author. They're not writing messages to me. They're sort of discussing books that are, so once it's published, it's out there. No, this was just someone on social media tagged me. Look what I've done. Oh my God. But yeah, you do get tagged in all sorts of things. That's another thing where you, again, about cutting out the noise. I don't tend to read reviews. I don't go on Goodreads because I'm not entirely sure it does me any good to do that, because they're discussing books. They're not sending me a message, really. I don't look at, sort of Amazon review, anything like that. It's lovely that people take the time, trouble and effort to do that sort of thing. There's a lot of it to go through. And I think as humans, we tend to gravitate towards the worst one. So you don't really read all the good ones. You just go, oh my God, what's this 1-star one? And that sort of outweighs all of the rest and all of the good. And then you start doubting yourself and doubting the work and just thinking, oh my God, this is awful. But all that big cloud need not ever have existed because I didn't need to look at it. It's not done me any good. So yeah, I do tend to not read those sorts of things.
It's the survival brain. It's very interesting, isn't it? That we will immediately maybe read it once and remember the wording of something awful. And there might have been 20 that were perfectly good, solid, enjoyed it. But the brain does its survival rather than thrive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is that sort of, well, if I want to be perfect, then I have to fix the flaws. But they're not really, they're somebody else's idea of, and I have, with my sort of first few books, I read a few of the bad ones, and then you realise that it's just a whole other world that you're going into, and you go down this kind of rabbit hole of, I remember one person saying, this book would have been so much better if it had been set at a spa. It's in a country house, it's classic murder mystery territory. Or another one, I hated everyone so much I even wanted to kill the dog.
Oh,
just so. I didn't write it for you to, make friends with people.
It's interesting how other people's creativity gets stunted, because one of the other reasons that I created the Writer's Gym is that we've all had moments. Those of us writing now have maybe found some of the way through it, but everybody's got their moments where I'm not the sort of person who, or I'm not the kind of writer who. And if that happens too early or too loudly, it stops people from writing in the first place. And that is when passive aggression or active aggression starts. So that person saying this would have been better if she'd written it in a spa. Yeah. There is nothing stopping that person going, I have had a positive idea for a murder mystery and I have a blank sheet of paper.
Yeah.
I will rock on, But oh no, it had to be that's what's wrong with somebody else's book.
I sort of steer my ship away from all that sort of thing. The first ever bad review that I read, I'm sure there are many, many out there, but this was like one of the very few I read right at the very beginning, did have quite a big impact on me, because I hadn't been aware of places like Goodreads. I didn't know this sort of thing went off. I didn't know that, people have followers on these sorts of things. And I had no idea about the industry at all, and just sort of blindly went in and read this. I remember crying to my husband, I've brought shame on my family. This book is so horrendous. I can't believe it's out there. And, you do have to just sit down and have a word with yourself and just say, the book is out there. I enjoyed writing it. Some people enjoy reading it. That's enough. That's all. Yeah. All it's not. I'm not trying to bring about world peace. It's just a murder mystery book.
But also, I'm so grateful that you've used that example, because we will have listeners going, everybody going, ooh, award, ooh, award, ooh, award, and the reality of it is that doesn't mean that people forget those horrible things that we hear, and I think that's why I think it is so important an example how you talk about protecting your time, that when you are at your desk, and that is where you are physically and emotionally and mentally. It's there, but you take evenings off and you have time for life. And I do think that sense of presence is very important, isn't it? That you're present in life, you're present in the writing,
totally.
rather than constantly spread too thin.
And we're writing about life, so if you don't, many of the characters I have come from I don't know, a bus ride somewhere or a tube trip journey, and you see someone, you think, oh, you're an interesting character, aren't you? And you may not use that particular exactness, but an attribute that they've got. I had a really creepy guy in this latest book that I've got, and there was someone opposite me on a train, and he had a small habit of he just had one fingernail that was slightly longer than the other, and he kept sort of almost combing it through his eyebrow. And it was this thing, and I just, once you've noticed something, that's it, isn't it? It's there
Yes.
forever. And they're just those tiny, tiny little things. I don't think I could have made that up myself. And it is just that. You don't need to say he was a creepy guy on the train. You just tell someone he had one fingernail slightly longer and kept combing it through his eyebrow. You're there. Everybody knows everything they need to know. But I'm sure the man himself was very lovely, but
But the gesture was exactly the key.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I was in a
Oh,
bookshop recently, and it was quite a crowded little bookshop, an independent little one, beautiful and wonderful. But this guy kept going past all the time who worked there, and eventually he needed to get past, and the aisles were quite narrow. And because he wanted to be quiet in the environment, he leaned in really closely to my ear, and his hair touched my hand. And I just thought, oh, that's going in a book somewhere, isn't it? Because, you just get that moment. That
yes.
tiny minutia. But that wouldn't happen if you don't go out to the bookshops. You've got to go out and live and not just totally be sat at the desk all of the time. And, I don't have an HR department. I'm my own HR department. And I have to look after my own, my mental health, my happiness, and enjoy the writing of the books and enjoy the world of books as well.
I feel like I've asked about a few of the things that you do that give you that writing health and that life health. Is there anything around that I haven't asked about that maybe works for you or that you might recommend?
Oh, I do odd things sometimes. So I wear really bad clothes. I don't put any makeup on. I don't do my hair if I know I have to stay in and do something. So I'm not tempted to go, I'll just go and buy a newspaper, you know.
Yes.
And I have
I'll
little,
just
yeah, yeah.
again.
I have
Yeah.
little tricks like that. I keep a lot of nice things on my desk as well, like hand cream or a little perfume or a candle. So when you're at that point where you're like really wrestling with something, you think actually let's just change the perspective a little bit in terms of I'm not going to get up and leave it. I'm going to keep trying with this. Let's see if I can make it a better environment. I think my environment's quite important to me.
I love that distinction of not doing makeup but having hand cream or having
Yeah,
perfume, something that is just for
yeah,
you.
exactly. Yeah,
Because I'm saying I love this and I'm behaving entirely differently because I find my body finds it confusing not to be wearing makeup. If I haven't done that in the morning, it's like I'm constantly there's something missing or I'm not quite there yet. But I love it as an idea because it's a way of signalling that this day is not about the outside world in any way. It
yeah.
is just sensorily for me.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it matters, what makes you feel good in something. And I think when I'm deep in the trenches with an edit or, particular chapter or structural stuff, I do sometimes just get up, get the coffee, go to my desk, and I'm still in my pajamas or, I'm in jogging bottoms, hair all over the show, and in a state. God knows what our postman thinks goes on in if he comes to the door. But it stops me thinking this is outside time. I kind of cocoon myself a bit, and make a sort of environment that is just me interacting with the book.
You mentioned about not being distracted by the tidying, which is a huge thing for so many of us. I'll just go and do the laundry. I'll just reorganize this shelf. But you've also at the same time mentioned the importance of the environment. And I think something for me personally, the one I let myself off is I do find that if I reorganize a shelf, it's usually because something in me needs reorganizing or something in the environment that it's feeding me rather than eating me in terms of my energy. But there is a fine line, that you
Yeah,
can,
very much
yeah.
so. I mean, it's kind of like I've always been like it, really. Like, even going back to doing big exams, degrees and all that jazz and A levels and things. Let it build around you, and I let it go, and I know I've got piles that need sorting, and they're here and they're here, and then I just shut off from that, and I'm at the final edit with the big book that comes out next year, and everything needs doing. And it's almost like a treat. I know that sounds awful. A treat at the end is to clear the boards, and physically clear the boards. I have big kind of what I call my murder boards where I plan the books and everything. And a really kind of bittersweet moment that I love and also think, oh, that's the end of that, is when I clear those boards. And I take it all down and I put it all in a box, and that book is done. That book is gone. Then that's completely finished. It's over. I'm ready for a new thing. And that's when I do, let myself clear away all that, because there'll be hundreds of pieces of paper and rubbish everywhere and things that have needed attention, I don't know, like stupid bills or direct debits and all that jazz. And actually, I then enjoy doing that because I kind of think, right, well, this is just, kind of just the admin around it, and I can get all this done and be neat and tidy. But the book has to come first. The book always comes first.
And the idea of the next book always comes first, that you're honouring those previous books.
Yeah.
And you said there was a box for them. Is that just receipts, or is that sort of images? Is it things associated with that book, and they each have their box that you keep?
Yeah. All the notebooks, there'll be hundreds of notebooks not hundreds, but there are hundreds of notebooks for all the different ones, but notebooks, let's see, maps, pictures, family trees, plot points, post-it notes, and I just tear it all down, and it all goes into the boxes. And I think you can probably see them if I tilt my camera.
Oh yeah, do.
They're up there. They're on top of the bookcase. Oh, these are all different. They're all over everywhere, really. I should have one special, but they're all down here as well. Yeah, there's lots of them.
This is why I so admire how you do this, is that's the first should I've heard from you. And we've been talking for 35 minutes, and so many people that I talk to as any author, not just authors, of course, but everybody, getting around the shoulds to the this works for me. Totally. And the only should is that the boxes should be down there, which I'm guessing is not a huge thing.
No, I hadn't realised. I mean, it's it's not a huge room, so it's full of books and everything and all sorts, and it grows around me really, and it's my kind of little cave where I exist when I'm a writer, and I'm not really saving the boxes for the nation.
I'm in my writing burrow. That's what mine is.
I think we all have to have somewhere like that. Yeah. Although, I often write in other places as well. If you do just think, oh yeah, no, I've got that now. I think this would be better elsewhere. And I've often got a little notebook or post-it notes by the side of the bed or something, because it's often whirring around in the background. So my poor husband often finds all sorts of things. I think the best one was a post-it note when I got up in the night and I saw the dawn come out. I thought, oh, I know what to do now. And I wrote it on the post-it note, because I will forget by morning. And it was kill the husband. And he found this in the morning. I'm hoping this is for a book.
Oh my God, that's brilliant.
Yeah. There's a few odd things like that around our house.
Oh, it's just too perfect as a way, isn't it? That your brain needed to tell you something, and managed to keep its sense of humour while doing so, and he found it.
And he found it.
Yeah. I feel like we've talked about writing health quite a bit, but not necessarily habits. If you are having, as I believe all humans do at some point, a low creative confidence moment, or it's sort of hard to get back in, are there habits, are there mindset things you say to yourself? How do you sort of support yourself in those moments where it ain't happening?
I would say reading is my main kind of go-to. And often just short stories, nothing big, nothing too difficult to get in there. You will get lots of knockbacks, unfortunately, as a writer. You have to stop all the kind of comparing yourself to anybody else, because nobody's the same writer, otherwise they wouldn't bother getting your books. So reading is my go-to point in any kind of storm. When you're thinking, this just isn't working. Often I will listen to audiobooks as well. So it's kind of ambient. And it's difficult with quite intricately plotted books to listen to it on an audiobook, because I lose my way a bit. But actually, at the same time I'm then thinking through my own book, if that makes sense. So two kind of parallel thought processes. And also I garden a lot. So I disappear into the garden for long periods of time. And well, I won't say what it is, but I had a big sort of, oh my goodness, this really works. And it's the name of a plant. So, I find being outside helps a lot, being in the garden and doing that kind of work, I don't know, digging in 100 daffodil bulbs. Or,
Yeah.
you don't think, you're giving your brain a chance to relax and not feel so intense about, I have to get a story. I have to get a story.
Do you find that walking sort of cafes do you give yourself office day outs like that, or is
No,
that
sadly
not a
not.
thing?
No, and I also don't really find those particularly useful. I would say it's more, yeah, the cave and gardening, very much so, and reading.
Yeah. And it's just about making that environment and that schedule that truly reflects who you are and how you get the best out of yourself.
Totally, yeah, and thinking it's not the end of the world, you know. Something will happen, something will come along, and our inspiration will come from somewhere. I was recently somewhere on holiday where I've been going for many years, and there's a balcony where I've always sat and read crime books, and I thought, gosh, I've been doing this for about sort of 20 years or more. And I looked across at the empty chair opposite and I said, what would I say to that person sitting there? And then I thought, oh, that's a really good idea for the start of a story. Communicating to somebody down the years to warn them or to help them to find out who done it.
I love stuff like that when it's inspired by, in a way, different versions of yourself and what you don't know about how you've changed in the environment you're in. That's fabulous. So is that one happening? Is that
I
in
hope
progress?
so. I think it'd be really good in a short story. It's a difficult one to pull off because it's going to need some sort of, almost supernatural kind of ability to do this. I thought in a form of a letter would be the best thing. So something I'm thinking, set at a special time, something like Christmas or Halloween, when, you think those kind of boundaries between reality and something else are slightly blurred. Could it help? I don't know. We'll see.
Are you a one thing at a time? Are you a one project at a time person? Or will you have more than one Word doc open in your head? So if that short story comes to you, do you sort of give yourself the notes and then say, I'll be back later? Or will you work on more than one thing at a time?
With something like that, that's a totally new project, I will put that to one side until I finish what I'm doing. But sadly, the way that the book world works and deadlines, etc., I've often got 2 or 3 books running alongside one another. So when books go off into edits, as you know, it goes for a long time. So while that happens, I am then working on the next book. And you get to a really cool bit and they'll go, here are your edits back. Oh God, now I've got to flip my mind back to that other book. I don't think there are many writers, particularly not in crime fiction, who write series, who write one book, wait for the edits to come back, then continue with that, and then they go all the way to the end and then start a new book, because that would just lengthen the process too much to have. With series fiction, you're looking at them coming out once a year, really, and to do that, the process has to be, I've written the first draft, which won't be the first draft, it's like, the 50th draft for me, but that draft that I'm happy with goes to the editor and then disappears for a while. At that point, I will give myself a bit of a break. The boards are not coming down at that point, unfortunately. So I will often have 2 boards or maybe 3 boards going. So I start on the next one, plotting it out, starting those first few chapters, etc. Then the edits will come back. So I go back to the board that's still running, basically. And you do have to be quite careful. I'm quite good at compartmentalizing those things, but I have had it in the Charlotte Blood book right at the very end. And I think one of the final edits, one of the editors said, who is Aunt Charlotte? Right at the end. Well, Aunt Charlotte is in the other series, and she just kind of somehow parachuted into this book, and I've never
Oh, wow.
noticed. And you do,
Oh,
your mind reads over things a lot of the time. It's kind of those things where you think, when you get the double word there, and people, how has this happened? Well, first of all, because it goes into edits a lot of the time, and things move around and change a lot. But also, I think your brain does read over those things a lot of the time.
do you have any sort of brain shake-up techniques that if you have got to that sort of word blind stage that happens when you're staring a lot, is it just a case of walk away, come back and swallow it?
That
Or
is
is there anything in
stop.
particular?
That is stop moment when you think, because we all do it, I'm sure, you're reading along and then you think, oh God, I don't know what happened in the last 3 pages. It's a bit like when you're driving somewhere and you get there and you think, I don't really remember that journey very well. The school run is one in particular, but because you do it so often. And when you get to the point with a book where I must have read this particular one 10, 12 times in its entirety since it's been finished. And at that point, your brain, if it gets to sort of 6 o'clock in the evening, and I've been going since 9 o'clock, I will sort of think, no, I can't remember what happened on the last couple of pages. I need to stop. And you do need to know when to stop and just think, nothing productive is happening here.
Yeah, there is a sort of shutters down moment in my brain, I think, where it's just like I don't know if you have this, but I think previously I might have not known the difference between when it is a good idea to push it and when it is actually a genuine message of I've given you the tank today and now the tank needs to refill.
Often it's physical as well. You do sort of think, I feel really weary. And, my steps on my phone, it tells a story, in itself. I know that when I've done like 13,000 steps, that's the point when I've had a break from writing. But I have days when I've done like 500 steps. And that is, basically just popping to the bathroom and making a cup of tea as well. That's about it. It is a very up and down kind of profession that you sort of have to iron out those bumps as much as you can and find an equilibrium with it.
Find an equilibrium so you are gardening and walking helpfully and it all feeds back into the writing rather than fight it, I guess.
Yeah, and doing nice things as well. Writing community, because I think we all know what all that feels like. It's very good at things like, a book launch or, going to a festival or something like that. And seeing other writers, getting to know them, even just going on a Zoom with them. I do a few little groups where we go on Zooms together. Just something where you're talking to other people, in your industry. It's sort of work, but often I will think, oh, I don't want to go to this book launch, I've got to get all ready, then I've got to get there. But every single time when I've done it, I think, oh, I had a lovely time there. I'm so glad I did. You see friends, see people you haven't seen in ages sometimes,
See a guy scratching his eyebrow and put it in next.
Yeah. Poor man, poor man. I hope he doesn't know who he is.
I hope he takes the compliment that's out there. I mean, because even that indescribably unhelpful thing where they went through the book and said, here are all my post-it notes.
Yeah.
There's always a compliment in there, and that comes from the writer as well as the reader. You being interested in that gesture, something invented. We are all connected out there. It is a compliment.
Totally. And the books I write are about human nature. And you can't really write about human nature if you don't see it kind of in action, and see everybody's little quirks and twitches and the things they do. And I do take it as a compliment that someone's taken the time and trouble and effort to go through my books and then reread the book to find out if it actually does work.
Yeah, and then tell you. It's almost like the sort of teacher's pet thing, isn't it? Look what I did.
Yeah, I mean, it's very flattering that people bother to read the books at all.
Victoria Dowd, thank you for joining the Writer's Gym.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been lovely. Thank you.
You've visited the Writer's Gym with author and coach Dr Rachel Knightley. Production and sound design are by Ashley Lexine, and theme music is by Chris Gregory.